Hi, and welcome to our Fourth Universalist service video. My name is Imber Kelly, and I'm the Director of Religious Education here at the Fourth Universalist Society. I use she and her pronouns, and thank you so much for joining us today. What follows are selections from our service on August 8th, 2021, a service about wonder, featuring James Underberg as a guest speaker. In this video, you will hear the reading and the reflection. Following that, we hope that you'll join us for a lively discussion where we get to dive a little deeper into the service theme together. You're invited to check out this video and audio podcast each week. It's posted on our website, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, as well as your favorite podcast streaming sites. If you like what you see, we do hope that you could leave us a positive review. The likes, the comments, the sharing, and subscribing, these all help to spread Fourth Universalist media further. Finally, we do acknowledge that our community is located on the land of the Munsee Lenape peoples. We acknowledge their community, past, present, and future. Fourth Universalist Society acknowledges that it was founded upon exclusions and erasures of many BIPOC peoples, including those on whose this institution is located. With this acknowledgement, we seek to continue the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism, white supremacy, as well as other forms of oppression. We invite you to join us in this work as well. Thank you again for watching. We begin with our reading.
Today's reading is from Alice Walker's The Color Purple. In this excerpt, which will be read by Alice Walker herself, Albert is talking with Celie about the big questions like, why are we here? This is Albert's response.
I think us here to wonder myself, to wonder. To ask. And that in wondering about the big things and asking about the big things, you learn about the little ones almost by accident. But you never know nothing more about the big things than you start out with. The more I wonder, he say, the more I love.
Good morning, everyone. For those who I don't know, I'm James Underberg, and really excited to be back with my home congregation here, Fourth U again. I'm excited to get something off of my chest, which is that I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what I'm here on the world to do. I don't know where we are in the arc of this pandemic. I don't know how to make sense of forest fires so vast they swallow up towns and turn the moon red. I don't know how to relate to the state of our politics and our democracy. I don't even know what I want for dinner tonight. And sometimes it feels like there's something wrong with me for having so many questions and so few answers, for feeling so confused. I can feel like that's the message I get from a world that values answers above all else. When I think about strength, I've been conditioned to picture someone who knows. I think about confidence, I imagine someone with clear convictions. And when I imagine progress, I measure it in terms of questions answered. And for sure, there can be strength in knowing, there can be strength in clear convictions, there can be strength in questions answered. But when that's the only place we see those qualities, then not knowing starts to feel like weakness or failure. And then we hold on to answers whether or not they have any truth or value. Sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, that person has really strong convictions. And it's just accepted. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a compliment to have clear convictions. And I think this is so revealing about our attitudes towards answers, because strong convictions are not good. They're not bad either. It just depends on what the convictions are. Martin Luther King had strong convictions, and so did Adolf Hitler. But it's like we've separated the value of having an answer from the value of the answer itself, so that just having an answer is a good thing. Answers at all costs. So with these conditions, no wonder it feels like I should have answers too. But in my finer moments, it's so clear that nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows. In this moment of the pandemic, we're kind of awkwardly trying to get back to some normal answers. But normal in this country is also a mess. Normal is a people divided into vastly different realities. Normal is burning up the planet. Normal is a mental health and opioid crisis. It's white body supremacy. It's nearly 2 million human beings living behind bars. It's billionaires cruising up into space while 500,000 people don't have homes in this country. That's normal. Are those the answers that we're excited to get back to? Maybe the problem isn't having too many questions and too few answers. Maybe the problem is having too few questions about our lives, about one another, about how we make decisions collectively and structure our society. When we privilege answers above all else and stop asking questions, we get stuck. That's what an answer is. It's a closing in around one possibility. And sometimes that's a good thing. If I'm sick, I want to close in around one possibility as soon as possible. I want to know why. So answers can be good, but other times answers can become a prison. It's part of why it's so hard to leave a job, a relationship, a religion, an ideology. It doesn't work, because in a culture that says you got to have answers and you're a failure if you don't, it can feel safer to cling to answers, even if they're killing us. It's also how we get stuck in violent ways of relating to ourselves and to one another. Valerie Kaur, who's a Sikh American, S-I-K-H, Sikh American author, describes the end of wondering and questioning as the beginning of violence. Because every human being is constantly changing with infinite layers and complexity. And when we stop being curious about parts of ourselves or about one another, when we say, I know who you are, we flatten and reduce the self or the other into one little fixed, dehumanizing answer. Yesterday, I had this thought, oh, I'm jealous of my friend, and so that means I'm a bad person. Even though that jealousy is just one of a million parts of who I am, and even though the day before I was delighted for them. Or you're unvaccinated, so that means you're a bad person, is another big one these days. It can be hard to resist that storyline in this time of intense polarization, even though that person has infinite layers and their vaccination status cannot come close to summing up who they are. But when we think we're supposed to have simple answers about everything and everyone, we put everything and everyone in boxes, and those boxes have walls, and those walls separate us from them. And when we're separate, we no longer feel empathy. And once that happens, all bets are off. We can say, I hate you because you're over there on the other side of that wall, and I don't feel your pain. When we stop wondering, that's the beginning of feeling separate, which is the beginning of maybe all of our problems. I don't know. And then that sense of being separate gets codified into policies, which become their own answers about how we police and tax each other, about where we build parks and where we build smokestacks, about how much inequality is okay. Answers that got us to normal. Answers that take on their own sacred status and get entrenched and hard to change, because at least they make us look like we know what we're doing. So if you're like me and you have a lot of questions, and sometimes it feels like something's wrong for not knowing, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the problem is we have too many answers and too few questions. So what do we do about it? I'm not sure. But it seems the first step is to tell a different story about knowing and not knowing. We could tell a story like the Mayan creation story we heard earlier, where nothing is wrong with us for not knowing. That's how it's supposed to be. It's a blessing, not a curse. It means we can always learn more. We could tell a story like Albert in The Color Purple, when he says, I think us here to wonder, to ask. Not to know, not to figure it all out or solve, but to wonder, what if that was why we're here? We could tell a story that recognizes strength in staying with the discomfort of not knowing, because you better believe that takes strength. A story that sees confidence in looking someone in the eye and saying, I don't know. That is confidence. A story that sees progress not just in questions answered, but in answers questioned. And these are not new stories. This is a story Mahatma Gandhi tells in his memoir, which he chose to call The Story of My Experiments with Truth. My experiments with truth. Instead of answers, we could be living experiments, we could be living hypotheses open to being challenged, adjusted, and proven wrong, and that's the whole idea. It's the story Valerie Kaur has chosen. In the wake of horrible violence towards her Sikh community, she writes about a daily practice of staying curious about even those who hate her. Easier said than done, but she shows it's possible. And this is a story that trans and gender non-conforming people have been living throughout the world and throughout time. Alok Vaid-Menon, who wrote our opening words, says, that is why trans people were historically regarded as spiritual leaders, because of our mastery of metamorphosis. This world teaches us that everything is fixed and cannot be changed. And then trans people enter and we say, we can change everything. So yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I have a sense that's not the problem, that we need more questions, not less. And I have some sense that we could use some more love in the world. And I have some sense, like Albert says in The Color Purple, that the more I wonder, the more I love. And I see the wisdom in Valerie Kaur's writing when she says, when we choose to wonder about people we don't know, when we imagine their lives and listen for their stories, we begin to expand the circle of those we see as part of us. We can look upon the face of anyone or anything around us and say, as a moral declaration and a spiritual, cosmological, and biological fact, you are a part of me I do not yet know. You are a part of me I do not yet know. Maybe every answer we need starts right there. So what will you wonder more about? Who will you wonder more about? Let's live like the people of the corn. Let's lead 7 billion experiments with truth. Let's wonder like it's what we're here to do.
So I am really excited to get to sit down with James Underberg, our guest speaker today. James, it's so great to have you here. Could you introduce yourselves for any of our listeners who may not know who you are?
Sure. Thank you, Amber. Yeah, really happy to be here. Also, James Underberg. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a member of Fourth Universalist. It's my home congregation, and I'm a student at Meadville Lombard, and excited. I'm going to be starting a hospital chaplaincy internship this fall. So that's a little bit about me. And yeah, happy to be talking to you. I was saying a little nervous also. We'll see what happens in this conversation, but
I'll take it easy on you, I promise.
yeah, please. Thank you.
Is that the chaplaincy, is that for your CPE as part of seminary?
It is, yeah, yeah. Clinical
Wonderful.
pastoral education. It's a part of the seminary program.
Yes, yes. As a seminary graduate, a fun time, the CPE time. If any of you listeners, you want to really challenge yourself, the clinical pastoral education, where you really got to dive in and think about how you process emotions around a lot of stuff, and how you work with others and how you care for others. It is a fascinating time of the seminary.
Yeah, wish me luck, please.
Yes, yeah, you'll do great, I'm sure. And I think honestly that like this message, I think if CP taught me anything, it was that I didn't have all the answers. So I feel like this is an appropriate lead in to today's message, is that when you start, I think as seminarians and as a lot of like undergrads and even as people in other grad school programs, we do like to come in thinking that we have all the answers, like that. Look at all this education we have, and as you mentioned, that we have this like as a society that it's like, hey, answers, like it's important to know everything, to have the whole system figured out. But when it gets time to like start really working with people, like suddenly just your whole world can get radically shifted. Has that been a little bit of your experience and kind of maybe what inspired today?
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely been some challenging conversations I've had with people who are coming at the world from a very different place than I am is part of it. And sort of how is that possible, whether it's politically coming from a different place or theologically coming from a different place. That's something I'm interested to see how that works in the clinical setting at the hospital when I'm talking to someone who has a very different understanding of religion and of God, and how will I be able to relate to that? And I feel like hopefully these kinds of messages of curiosity and wonder will be a support in that. But yeah, I think the inspiration, so that's part of the inspiration for the message today. And the rest of the inspiration is just the world and my feeling of being lost and confused. And that's not a new feeling for me.
Right.
So this has been a theme for me for many years. I'll say that.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, especially these last 2 years, I think it's been really a feeling for a lot of folks is, as someone who was a bit more disillusioned, perhaps, and also like in Vietnam when the pandemic started, and watching people kind of have this like, wait, like we don't have all the answers. We didn't do everything right. Like, it's shaking. It's a little bit jarring at first to have like all of your assumptions really, really shaken and have to realize that you can't be 100% sure.
Totally. And I was feeling lost before that. So in some ways I was a little relieved. It's like, okay, good. I'm not the only one.
Now everyone else is too.
But yeah, I think talk about the futility of trying to predict the future or know what's going to happen. No one predicted this. No one saw it coming. We can think we have it all figured out, and then life happens.
Right.
It's just unique because it was sort of, oftentimes I think that happens to one person individually at a given time. This was an example. And there are, I guess, anytime a kind of tragedy on this scale strikes, it's an example where everybody is grappling with that same experience at once.
Definitely. When so many of us, like, we hold on to this, we still want to hold on to like the old way that we had it. And I think that as we were prepping for this, I was talking a little bit about like how in my own life as a trans woman, that like in some interactions with friends or with family, that they still very much want to like hold on to this new person, and or to this old person, and not realize like, hey, things change, and get to understand me and get to know me. You talked a little bit about that and the trans experiences in the message, like people love to be able to have a quick and easy summary and a quick and easy understanding, whether it's of the world or of other people. what are some ways that we can really like start to deprogram ourselves from that, like wanting to do that?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the ways. I don't know if you're familiar with Alok Van Manden, if you've heard their work before, but I just have so appreciated the way they talk about sort of the gift that trans people are offering the rest of us, and at often tremendous sacrifice to their own lives and their families' lives. But they are sort of offering us this reminder and waking us up to the fact that we can question everything, and that I mean, I have a lot of, and that in that sense, sort of the movement for trans liberation is not just for trans people, it's for everyone. So I've really appreciated hearing Alok's perspective on that, and just having kind of a lot of gratitude for the trans community and the gift that they're offering the world, even though a lot of people in the world aren't ready to accept that gift.
Right. Well, I think it's Freire, if I'm remembering correctly, that talks about how that liberation is mutually beneficial. Like the oppressors are losing part of their humanity by like wanting to hold on to like they think that it's working great for them, but in reality it's not good for us to hold on to these old ways of hurting others.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. The empathy, we joked when I was taking notes on your message, I just wrote down only the word empathy, but empathy, like that's a key way to start understanding other people's experiences. It's easier said than done, I think.
Yeah, it's both, I think, maybe a way of understanding people's experiences, and it's what comes when we understand people's experiences. But also, even if we don't understand each other's experiences, I think it's still possible to invite in empathy if we have that intention. We don't need to, this is another thing Alok talks about, like we don't need to understand in order to love.
Yeah. Well, as you said in the message, the strength in not knowing, we don't have
right.
we don't have to know. Like we can, gosh, your message really hit home as I prepare for our soft opening in 2 weeks, and I have this sense in myself that I'm like, I need to have it all figured out. I need to have every, I dotted and T crossed, and I need to like have the entire. There needs to be no wiggle room for any issue. And that's just not doable for human beings.
Totally, yeah. It's not natural. If we wanted to be robots, maybe.
I mean, I could, we'll get some robot students.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and why, and can that be beautiful? That's part of the beauty of being human, is that we're not perfect and we're not all knowing, and it's totally just a cultural story that's a problem. We could tell a different story if we wanted to.
Yes, yeah, making a new way of doing things.
Yeah.
Yes. So the nerd in me, when you talked about, I wrote down the phrase, so, and it might be the complete phrase from the message, but I wrote down a part of me that I do not yet know. Did I get it down right when I wrote it down?
That's the phrase, and just to make clear that those are not my words. Those are the words of Valerie Kaur. Highly recommend her book, See No Stranger, by the way. But yes, those are the words.
Yes. Well, so as a giant nerd, it reminded me of Doctor Who. I once spent a lot of time watching Doctor Who, not quite as much anymore. But in the transition from the 11th Doctor to the 12th Doctor, they have this whole thing called regeneration. And the 11th Doctor delivers this monologue, and it's one that stood out to me as a trans person. But I think it also resonates with this from today. So let me grab it here and read it. And so the Doctor is talking to his companion and is getting ready for this big change. And the Doctor says, "We all change when you think about it. We're all different all through our lives. And that's okay. That's good. You've got to keep moving, as long as you remember all the people that you used to be." And so that kind of came up to, in my mind the second that I heard you say that. I'm like, ooh, I gotta go find this Doctor Who quote real quick. Does anything about that resonate with you?
Totally. Yeah. In the coffee hour talking after the service, we were sharing about sort of different answers collectively that we feel like aren't working. And for instance, the two-party system in our political system. And it can be easy to kind of really get hard on ourselves. And what came up for me was there's this other line from Thich Nhat Hanh, which didn't quite make it into the sermon, but he talks about knowing as this kind of journey, climbing up a ladder, and that you're on one rung, and then to get to the next rung, you got to let go of what you're holding and reach for the next one, and hold on to that one as you put up your feet, and then let go of that to get to the next one. And so the rungs that we've traveled through are what got us here. And the problem is if we are holding on to them and we stop our learning, we stop our growth. So I don't know, when I think about myself and these parts of me and who I used to be, it's like, oh, all those parts of me, like those were the earlier rungs.
Right.
And yeah, so how do I really like welcome and invite and remember them, because I wouldn't be who I am if not for those.
Right. But then also realize that someday the
Right.
current you will be the past you, as long as you keep climbing up there. Now, it's a
Right.
beautiful illustration.
Exactly. Yeah.
I purchased last year some Thich Nhat Hanh books as part of my prep work for things, and he's a great writer.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Amazing, beautiful soul too.
So as a final interesting question and thought is, just a few weeks ago, and I can't remember for sure, I'm not 100% who it was who delivered the message, but we had a message that was about wonder in the sense of like this feeling and, even like the really abstract feeling, like wonder, like the world is so amazing and like, wow. But then today, it kind of felt like this was much more about wonder as action. Do you want to talk a little bit about like that difference and like these senses of wonder?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about that. The same word can describe different things, and what is the relationship between these different kinds of wonder? And I'm not sure. I haven't really fully thought it through, but it seems like you need to have there needs to be kind of the curiosity and openness to new experience that's in the kind of wonder as action, wondering about, in order to feel the sense of awe and wonder. I don't think I feel wonder about things that I know exactly what they are. And maybe the other way around too, where in order to feel curious about something, like it's helpful to be in awe of them.
Right.
And like, wow, I can never fully know you, but I'd like to learn a little bit more. So maybe in that way, these two they're definitely connected, the two understandings of the word, and they build on each other. But yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, that could be its own sermon, talking about, what these two words have.
Hey, keep that in mind for your next sermon pulpit. No, like, and I think you hit on something there, because like, when we see something really like majestic in nature, yes, like we can do some science and figure out certain parts of it, but there's still just something about all of these things all together. Like, when you look up in the night sky and realize that there's literally billions of other like stars, and like the sun is only one star amongst billion, and like you can understand that scientifically, but like there's also just a sense that it's so like beyond comprehension, like how huge it is. I think being curious, you got to be curious to be learning.
I think so. And the same is true with people too. We're all just, infinite universes, and we'll never fully know each other. And so I think it's easy to kind of just going, oh, here's another human being, here's another human being, but every human being is a whole universe too. And it's sort of overwhelming when you kind of think about it. But I think that's kind of what Valerie Kaur is getting at in talking about how wonder helps with love, because when we're open to the vastness of others, we're really seeing them in their humanity. We're remembering that they're human beings as well. Whereas when we're sort of, oh, I know you and you're this, they're basically, we're sort of killing them. They're just kind of this fixed thing that's not really alive. It's just like an image. So, yeah.
Bringing me back a little bit to my thesis days there. We had to do a constructive theology where you got to like cover the different parts of a like a theological worldview. And for like my image of God, I talked about God as the other and how that can train us to think about humans as other, and like that it's okay for people to be other because to everybody else we are also other. Like,
right.
I think that was real beautiful the way you said it, of that everybody is a universe kind of in themselves too.
Yeah.
Appreciate the otherness of each other.
Right. Yeah, and the infiniteness, and then also the sameness of the other, in that I'm a universe too, and so we're both in that experience of like, I'll never really fully know myself either, and we're in this experience of humanity of not really knowing, and that's kind of the deal. That's like what we signed up for.
James, it's been wonderful to get to sit and wonder with you, to keep thinking a little bit. And thank you also. I want to give some credit where credit is due for the recommendation on the Time for All Ages, as well as the great images. So that was great. I really enjoyed getting to share that. So thanks for joining us today, James.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ember. It's been lovely working with you and having this debrief. So thank you.